All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we are diving into a brand new, really high-stakes battlefield in the world of AI. This is a big one because it's going to determine who survives and who gets left behind. So there's this whole new wave of what are called agentic AI startups, right? And they are facing a massive threat from the very platforms that made them possible to begin with. I mean, think about it. What do you do when OpenAI or Google just decides to build the exact same thing you sell? That's the huge question we're looking at. Okay, let's get into it.
We really dug into the market, looking at 21 of these prominent startups, and you know what? A super clear pattern started to emerge. It cleanly separates the companies that are vulnerable from the ones that are actually resilient. And this gives us a fantastic framework to figure out who has a business that can actually last.
Okay, so let's start with the most vulnerable group. We're calling them the danger zone. And yeah, these are the companies walking on some seriously shaky ground.
So out of those 21 companies we looked at, 5 of them fall right into this high-risk category. We're talking nearly a quarter of the entire group facing, pretty much imminent disruption. So you have to ask, why are these guys so exposed? Well, take Emma, for example. They call themselves a universal AI employee. Sounds cool, right? But that broad approach is actually their biggest weakness. It puts them in direct competition with the LLM providers themselves. And then you've got Adopt.ai. They provide a command interface, which is basically just a feature. It's not a full business, and it's a feature that the big platforms are now just building right into their own products.
The key thing to see here is that all these companies have a few things in common. They're horizontal, meaning they don't focus on one specific industry. They're also building pretty simple, what we call Tier 1 agents for basic stuff like data entry or scheduling. You could say they were pioneers, for sure, but the very ground they pioneered is now being swallowed up by the giants.
All right, let's move on to the next group, because you can see how this story builds. Now, these are companies that actually have some defenses, but the giants are already moving in on their turf, and those protective moats they built, yeah, they're starting to look a lot more like puddles.
So we found 4 companies that are stuck in this kind of precarious middle ground. They're holding on to an advantage, but it's temporary. The clock is definitely ticking for them.
The real problem for this group is that the technology is just moving too fast. I mean, look at a company like Kore.ai. They built a really strong business on older, rule-based agents, but that whole approach is being replaced by the advanced generative AI we see today. DaveAI is another perfect example. Their 3D avatars give them a bit of a moat, for now. But with Google and OpenAI making these huge leaps in multimodal agents, that whole space is about to get really crowded really fast. And this leads to the killer question their customers are starting to ask. Why should I pay another vendor for something the platform I already use is starting to do, right? When the core platform you're already paying for, say OpenAI or Google, offers similar stuff, the value of a separate tool just nosedives. That is a very tough spot to be at. So, with all this disruption, who's actually surviving? Let's look at our final group. These are the startups that have found a way to be resilient. We're calling this the safe for now zone. And it's a big group. 11 of the 21 companies we looked at, so more than half, fall into this much more defensible category. And it's because they built their businesses in a totally different way right from the very beginning. See, these companies are not building generic one-size-fits-all tools. Nope. They are solving deep, very specific problems for particular industries. Take Luminai, for example. They focus on super complex workflows in the highly regulated world of healthcare. Or look at Gnani.ai. They have this amazing 3-part moat. They're voice first, they have deep knowledge of financial processes, and they specialize in Indic languages. You just can't replicate that combination easily if you're a giant. So their real value isn't just the AI model itself. It's the deep, specialized business logic they've built on top of it. They pick a vertical, they go deep, and they solve those complex Tier 2 or Tier 3 problems, the stuff that requires actual tactical or strategic thinking. And they integrate themselves so deeply into their customers' operations, now that's a real defense. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, a really clear pattern for survival just pops out from the analysis. And it all boils down to one thing, being a specialist. And here it is. This is the core takeaway, laid out right next to each other. On one side, you've got the vulnerable companies. They're horizontal, they offer simple features, they handle generic workflows. And on the other side, you have the resilient ones. They're vertical, they're focused on a niche, they solve complex problems with specialized logic, and, this is key, they offer a full solution, not just some add-on feature.
This one line from the analysis just says it all, doesn't it?
The only durable advantage is to be a specialist. In a world where the big platforms provide all the general intelligence, being a specialist isn't just a good idea anymore. It's literally the only way to survive.
And this massive split, this division between the vulnerable generalists and the resilient specialists, it means the market is heading for a huge shakeup. We are talking consolidation, we're talking acquisitions, pivots, the whole shebang. The game is changing, and it is changing fast.
So for those vulnerable companies, the path ahead is pretty tough. They either get acqui-hired for their tech or their talent, or they just fade away. But the resilient specialists? They become prime acquisition targets for the giants who want a shortcut into a specific vertical. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In this new AI battlefield, are you building a feature or are you building a fortress?